Hello, everyone. We are extremely glad to have you here in this event. We are glad that we have a lot of people who found an opportunity to join us today. We have started our Facebook translation right now.
Сьогодні ми тут зібралися для того, щоб поговорити про довгострокові стратегії інтеграції переселенців і переселенок у громади. І, зокрема, ми будемо говорити про те, як же забезпечити
We came here today to talk about the long-term and complex strategies for integration of internally displaced people, and also how to engage them in decision-making in the communities that were first to be relocated.
Організаціями громадськими у Німеччині та в Україні. Незважаючи на те, що контексти трошки різні,
We've decided to establish an exchange between the German and Ukrainian communities. Although the contexts are quite different, still we have some joint challenges and joint practices we may share. Today we will talk about the ways to engage the migrants more in daily life.
Власне, збираємося для посилення зв'язків між муніципалітетами і громадським суспільством України та Німеччини і обмінюємося досвідом. Перша наша подія була 5-го, здається, вересня.
The first event in this series was held on September 5th, and you can find the recording and listen to our discussions on our Facebook page. We organize these events with German and Ukrainian parties. German side is represented by the Berlin-based umbrella organization for migrant organizations called Move Global, and Ukrainian party is presented by Ukrainian think tank SEDOS. The event series is held within the framework of the Empowering Migrant Voices project. This event is also held within the Cross-Culture Synergy program, and it is funded by the Institute for Foreign Cultural Relations. Anyway, why is it important to talk about engagement of migrants? One of the reasons for that is that people come to various decisions in their lives, and some people are not willing to come back to Ukraine from abroad where they already settled. This tendency is quite obvious. You can see that in Ukraine. Some of the IDPs are planning to stay abroad in the communities where they found shelter, and also in the communities they were relocated within Ukraine. So there are a lot of people willing to stay in the communities they were first to be relocated. That's why this challenge forces us to think about the long-term strategies about integration of IDPs and their engagement in decision-making processes. That's why we've gathered here, and we'll talk on the processes and the way they happen in Ukraine and Germany. We'll exchange our best practices and think together on the ways to advance our methodologies. We're going to have 2 speakers from the German side and 2 speakers from the Ukrainian side today.
Інтеграції Сенату Берліна в Департаменті праці, соціальних справ, рівності, інтеграції, різноманітності та боротьби з дискримінацією Сенату. А також Наталія Пригорницька, співзасновниця Альянсу українських організацій.
Speakers from Germany are Natalia Prigornitska, co-founder of the Alliance of Ukrainian Organization, and Yulia Portnova, Officer for Participation at Berlin's Integration Commissioner Office in the Senate Department for Labor, Social Affairs, Equality, Integration, Diversity, and Anti-Discrimination. Whereas Ukrainian speakers are Valeria Vershinina, who is Director on Legal Affairs in Charitability Fund, and Anastasia Perepelitsa, IDP Council of the Zaporizhia Regional Military Administration. This event is generally designed to be a networking event. So I offer you to use our chat for networking purposes. So you may write in the chat, uh, who are you, what do you do, and what are your interests and requests for this event. You can do it now or do it during the event. And I highly encourage you to present yourselves and uh, get to know other people who are here today. I'll also mention some technical aspects. I shall ask if everything is okay with the translation now. Does everything work as supposed? You'll have Q&A session after each of the blocks, after the German block and after Ukrainian block. The only peculiarity is that our first speaker from Germany will leave earlier. That's why we will ask her questions right after her input. But then the Q&A sessions will take place according to the schedule. You can raise your hand graphically in Zoom and use your voice to ask your question. You can also type your questions in our chat, and you can also type your questions in the comments on the Facebook page where translation takes place. We're also limited in time. That's why we may not have enough time to go through all of the questions. Still, I encourage you to ask all of the questions you are willing to. And also, the final condition is safety. If you're somewhere where the air raid alarm may sound, where it may be unsafe, I encourage you to, in that case, to go to the bomb shelter and stay safe. And you'll be able to watch the translation, watch the recording later. That's why I encourage you to stay safe. Safety is a foremost priority for us. I guess we may start now. I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, who is Yulia Portnova. She's Officer for Participation at Berlin's Integration Commissioner Office in the Senate Department for Labor, Social Affairs, Equality, Integration, Diversity, and Anti-Discrimination. I managed to, to repeat the title. That's why, Yulia, the floor is yours.
Going to put my speech in German. I do understand Ukrainian, but I can't speak Ukrainian. So before I start with my input, I'd like to announce and make a few announcements. I'm very currently not in my office. We are supposed to, the whole department I'm part of, and all my colleagues are supposed to part of plenary session that is currently taking place, which is the reason why I had to kind of apologize, excuse myself to attend to this event. And I'm very thankful for the invitation, since I really wanted to honor it. I do hope that everything functions well with the translation, and thank you very much. And I would like to introduce to you how we seen it for this Department for Integration. That's the abbreviation for this very long name that were attributed to us, but that Alina already mentioned several times, and the moderator as well. How do we work? What are the strategies that we're using to achieve our goals in the aim of supporting refugees from the Ukraine, and how to help them to integrate into society and allow them to, of course, to enjoy the participation opportunity that are being made available to them. And I'm also going to cover some other aspects that are relevant and related to what we're doing. I would like to make sure that I speak as close as possible, but like to first present the general structure, how the Synod is operating in Berlin, particularly the Department for Integration and those who are responsible to accompany and support people with migration history. So it's like this. I'm responsible. I'm work officer at the Synod Department, specifically the Synod Department for Integration, Participation, Anti-Discrimination, and Equality. And that big youth synod is separated in divided in different departments. The department integration is directed by the integration commissioner. So we also have, of course, her name is Katarina Nevichau. She is the director of that department, but at the same time, she's also a kind of ambassador for the migration topic in Berlin. And we here in Berlin aim to acknowledge our migration background as a diversity, and through the increasing number of people who are moving to Berlin, willingly or unwillingly, running away from specific disaster, we are trying to make sure that those people find a place in the city. So we in the summit for the integration, we have several departments that address specific topics as integration politics, but on the other side, we're also trying to make sure that we cover the needs of the people. For instance, we are trying to focus on the needs of people who are fled from the Ukraine. Integration as a word is understood in our case as a topic that is broad, and to address it, it's not only about trying to come out with a department that will address the focus in a specific manner, but we understand as a central task that also concerns other departments such as education and finances, and all that broad aspect needs to be considered when measures are being put in place to address the topic appropriately. An important approach that we're trying to cover that we usually do not find in the word integration is that integration also means that minority should include itself in the majority society. We in our department and as a participation commissioner, like it's being called, still being named, we are trying rather to strengthening the participation of migrants. Participation means creating participation opportunity for people to be part of the activities, political decisions, processes that are being taken, offered to any other member of the society. We also trying to make sure that people who have specific biography of migration are included in the process and the discourses that are taking place in our society. What does that mean concretely? It means that if we have, for instance, people who one parent is not from originally from Germany, where you have family who are very diverse because the parents are not from originally from Germany, we have trying to make sure that we come up with a appropriate solution for them to be part of the society. So as a participation commissioner, we are trying to strengthen the participation of those people specifically. So that, of course, applies to people who fly from Ukraine. And on the other side, of course, we have to acknowledge the fact that we have a lot of challenges that we are going through when we look at the question of housing, finding a place for those people to stay, as well as the question of training and education. So all those challenges we are trying to address in an appropriate manner, and as we are aware of them, and to do that, we are trying to come up with a long-term strategy that has been written in a war concept that is addressing the question of refugees that was conceived in 2013, and that concept is was trying to show us how there is a need to analyze the topic from various perspectives, talking about health, community, working base. We are trying to come up with measures that can be implemented by the specific department that are equally affected by the topic of migration of refugees, to make sure that people are included in the society. So the main concept was finalized last year, specifically this year, with the action plan for Ukraine. And the action plan Ukraine specifically are specific measures that came out conceived to provide assistance to refugees who fled from Ukraine, more particularly the one who managed to get to Berlin, so that they can get involved in the several aspects of our society. Adding to that, while we conceived that, when we came up with that concept, we come up with other measures on how we can promote a cooperative approach between stakeholder from the administration, but as well as stakeholder from civil society. What does that mean? We as administration are trying to work closely with the civil society stakeholders. What does that mean? When we are trying to come up with concepts, we are creating opportunity for the civil society stakeholder to be part of the discussion of the conception. We're talking about umbrella organization, experts from the civil society. We invite them to specific exchange meetings, but also for them to get involved in election or decisions that need to be taken when it's all about trying to come out with ways to reach out to specific target groups. Of course, it equally means that it's a question of resources, that approach requires a lot of resources and a lot of focus. And this is something that we're also following up, in the sense that we acknowledge that we need funds to be made available to the stakeholders of civil society for them to be able to be part of all those measures that we come out with. And at this point, I really have to acknowledge it. To be honest, our goal is to try to make sure that, in general, the Berliner political landscape try to see the civil society as cooperation partners, not as part of a society that need funds for specific activity and are related or relevant for the administration. And that, of course, is linked to the participation process that we came out 2020. It was a participation process that aimed at creating opportunity for the administration to link or orientate the politics in the direction of migration history. That, of course, means equally that there was a need to create a strategy that allowed people with migration background to be able to be hired for specific positions, or for them to get involved in specific structures that have been close to them so far. On the other side, of course, we had to make sure that the civil society stakeholder can be acknowledged in the process of decision taking as expert and the skills as well. Adding to that, we also came out with commissions like the state umbrella or commission for migration, which is made of 13 stakeholders of the civil society and 13 organizations, meaning NGOs, like we have the German Organization for Workers, and who are also a part of this commission. That commission, which is made of stakeholders from civil society and also individuals and NGOs, also includes representatives of this Berliner Senate. That commission is majorly responsible to make the needs of the civil society in regard to participation more visible, and to share or give forward those needs or those demands to the political and decision takers. Another aspect of our work is on how we make sure that the civil society initiative, or specifically those who are providing support to refugees, for them to integrate the society can be supported through funds. For project last year, we initiated the Berliner funds specifically for that topic. There was a fund that was created to promote, support organizations that are focusing on people in migration history who are trying to support refugees from the Ukraine who fly due to the war, and those organizations who are specifically providing measures by arrival of those people. For example, we have one organization that is proposing trauma counseling to young women, mothers, and children who fled from Ukraine. We also have, for instance, an organization that is providing counsels. We also have another one that is, for instance, providing refugees from Ukraine, suggesting to them measures to participate in the society, in the city. And another thing for this round, maybe that may be interesting for you, is the fact that that commission I'm talking about is also is made of one of the members, or some of the members are also originally from Ukraine. And we also have, for instance, one specific one who is a Black woman who originally came from the Ukraine. We also have one representative who is an Ukrainian activist based in Berlin. And we also have people who have a flying background. And of course, those people have the one who can relate the best to the needs of the target group and come out with appropriate measures that will be able to provide assistance to those people according to their needs. Specifically, when we talk about trying to find people, help those people to find a kind of stability in this new environment, or to see if possible they can short break time to overcome the situation, and as well maybe see if there's opportunity for them to return to the countries of origin. So I would just make a cut here to create opportunity for question to be asked. I'm seeing that there seems to be some, I'm seeing a lot of faces on my screen. Maybe love to have some connection with you. Just an organizational question, I can still a bit longer, but since I requested to intervene at first, I would love to see if it's possible for us to get straight away to the discussion rounds. Thank you very much.
Дуже дякуємо, Юлія. Мені здається, взагалі, така якась думка з вашого виступу, яка мені дуже сподобалась, про те, що інтеграція – це не про те, що меншість розчиняється в більшості, а це, власне, про якусь активну участь. Шановні гості, чи є у когось запитання до Юлії? Можливо, хтось хотів би щось сказати?
Dear guests, do you have any questions to Yulia? You can either raise your hand or type your question in a chat.
У мене немає руки. Хотілося б конкретно якийсь приклад інтеграції, про якийсь конкретний кейс.
I'd like some explicit case of integration, the integration of refugees from Ukraine.
Чи якесь культурне подія.
Some cultural event or some real case that was implemented. That was implemented thanks to the Federal Council. If you may name any cases.
Ich bin schon stumm. Ich bin gar nicht mehr stumm geschaltet, genau. Ich habe jetzt die Übersetzung nicht eingeschaltet, aber ich habe verstanden.
Didn't turn on the translation, but I do understood that the question is all about which specific measures were put in place to promote integration.
in der Senatsverwaltung.
at the level of the Senate. Well, integration is not something that's just happening, where you go somewhere and then you have access to some specific process that allows you to integrate yourself automatically. I can base myself on my own personal history. I'm originally from Ukraine, from the west side, but I was born here in Germany, and my parents have been living in Germany for more than 30 years, but I will not claim that they're integrated, but they are also. So what do I mean with that? I want to highlight the fact that there's nothing that there's not something that you can quantify, but we want specific examples on how the administration is trying to address the topic in an appropriate manner, then so that no doubt we have the war in Ukraine, and we allowed Ukrainians to come to Germany. Another specific example would be the action plan that I mentioned earlier on, that was an spontaneous reaction to the war that started in Ukraine. So we specifically, as Senate, decided to come up with a specific solution to react to that war, specifically regard the fact that those refugees from Ukraine have specific treatment comparing to other refugees. It means that those people had more advantages comparing to the refugees who were there before, but doesn't mean that everything was perfect and things have been going on the way they're supposed to be. But those specific refugees were treated differently comparing to those who from other countries were here in Germany for longer. But the outgoing situation was the fact that we have so many people who were running away. So we have to come up with ad hoc solutions, ad hoc measure to cover the specific challenges that link with that situation. And a concrete measure that could be mentioned is that we providing funds to initiative who are providing support, who are doing that job on the field. Another example is, for instance, the fund that we made available to promote integration slots, and for those who are trying to support refugees in their daily life. Integration slotting, what does that mean? This is one specific tool, how should I call it? It's a tool that was put in place where you have single individuals or participatory society who are usually people who themselves have a migration background, but who very much settled in this country, knows how the society functions, make themselves available to welcome the newcomer from the Ukraine and help them to find their way in the society. Talking about administration processes, we come up with very low base proposal solutions. For instance, writing formulas, submitting some specific applications to the state. Those are specific measures that we try to come up with that we consider as a direct reaction to the war in the Ukraine.
Дякую дуже. Хочу відмітити, в мене донька емігрувала в Німеччину, я тільки звідти приїхала.
I'd like to say that my daughter immigrated to Germany, and I'm extremely grateful for the way you receive our refugees. One of the ways of integration is learning German language. Ukrainian citizens have free lessons of German language. People learn the language, master the language, and they can integrate more, they can find more opportunities, and it's generally easier for them to adapt. It's a wonderful case of integration. Hello. I'm not sure whether we had a hand before.
Зараз я просто, я запитаю тоді, чи Валерія, чи це у вас була рука, чи я помиляюся?
Valeria, do you have your hand raised? Yes.
Тоді ви після Валерії, і тоді вже будемо згортати дискусію, бо не вистачить часу. Так, Валерія?
Я хотіла запитати, чи
I wanted
застосовують
to ask a question whether you have any kind of system of indicators, like key points of the scale that migrants are engaged in local life. As you mentioned, they have a different status. They're not refugees. And do you have such a system of indicators? And whether this indicator help to indicate their requests?
Now, just want to highlight if can the translator please translate the last part of the question so I can make sure I understand what she said,
wenn das möglich ist.
if possible.
Okay, ich höre das leider nicht. Genau, aber
Sadly, I can't hear it, but I would like to try to highlight the question of indicators. But that's a good question that was asked in a rightful one. I already mentioned to you the action plan that we initiated that was part of the main concept of integration of refugees people. And here specifically, we are trying to, as I mentioned, the concept itself was shortly written and as a reaction to the war that began in Ukraine and is still not really completely finalized. It's currently in the final stuff in the last phase. And just like you mentioned it, to be able to quantify it, we are trying to come up with a monitoring system. And to do that, we collaborated scientists, academians with Ukrainian background, and exactly we're trying to come out with that monitoring system that will allow to quantify the result that we are going to achieve and to evaluate them to see how effective the measures that are part of the concept will help us achieve the expected results.
Дякую дуже за відповідь.
Дякуємо, Юлю. Я так розумію, що вам потрібно бігти вже. Чи ми ще можемо Андрія питання?
Julia, do you have to run now, or do you have a couple of
Wir können
minutes?
gerne noch eine Frage machen, ja.
Добре, тоді, Андрію, давайте...
Okay, let's go for a question from Andriy. Let's try to do it quickly and move on after that.
Андрій, чи ви з нами?
Так, я хотів запитати, мене
Andriy,
цікавить,
are you here? I'd like to know.
мене цікавить питання,
Hello once more.
які сфери
I have a question regarding integration.
заторкується інтеграція, тому що людина, в принципі, може інтегруватися в різних сферах, і які,
I have a question of
залучаються, і чи конкретні ще органи, окрім державних,
what life feels
якісь релігійні організації, наприклад, чи якісь спортивні організації.
does integration refer only to daily life, to households, or also to a broader field of life fields? And also, what are the bodies engaged in integration
One more time, I'd like to
processes?
highlight the following aspects. Integration is not something that just happen like that. It's a process. It's a long process. That's the reason why you can understand integration when integration can understand a lot of things. It could be, and America just mentioned the question of language. Language, of course, plays central, important role in one trying to find way in a new country, and to be able to communicate with people. Of course, assume that's also one of the key elements to communicate with others, and of course to find access to jobs, opportunities, and to education. Doesn't need to master language. But another side, I also want to highlight the fact that integration is not something that can be an easy process, and it's also a question that affects or concern the whole society. So it should be understood as a task that is given to all the society, not only to the seniors for integration, but what we're trying to do in our case is that we're trying to mobilize our administration to highlight the importance of this topic, to integrate importance of solution, but specifically the participation mostly of people with migration background who have arrived in Berlin, specifically those who have been perceive and come out with appropriate measures. You asked for organizations who are leading the work. I already mentioned some organizations who have been doing the work. For instance, the state advisory council, where you have stakeholders or representative of the civil society, specific Ukrainian refugees, but also have institutions who are doing some good work. We have the German industries that be doing a good job. We also have the German Chamber of Commerce who's also be doing a good job. Those stakeholders are trying to orientate their work in the direction of people migration backgrounds with refugees. So what does that mean in trying to make sure that not only the bio-Germans, how they usually call, who have a German pass, who owns a German pass, who have Germans by origins, are part of that target group, but also people with several histories, the diverse biography can be addressed by the education offers jobs opportunities that are present in the market. But for it to do it, of course, you have to integrate them in the several trainings opportunities so that they can provide the skills that are needed on the job market. Also, that's something for ourselves as a department are trying to come up with a project to make sure that network of trainings program can be put in place to address the needs of that specific group of refugees who fly from Ukraine. But also, for instance, those who fly from Syria and other countries, to see how we can support those people so that they can also acquire some skills, professional skills, and master the language. Not acquisition from organizations. We can also mention the religious one. I can't give you specific information on that, but of course, if you wish to I've also mentioned we also have other organizations such as the sport federation that has been playing a key role in promoting the participation of people with fly history in specific measures, activities, talking about sport activities, coming out with measures to come out with spaces for people to be hosted.
Sorry to interrupt you. We just are really tight on time. So
Oh, sorry.
yeah, if you have any concluding remark, then please. But
Ja.
to
Genau.
finish.
Genau, danke schön, ja. Also meine Abschlussbemerkung wäre einfach nur auf jeden Fall
Closing remark would be highlight the fact that integration is not something that just happened like that ad hoc, but something that needs to be understood as a process and a common goal addressed to the society as a whole, to the administration, but also civil society. And we as such need to make sure we come out all stakeholders are equally involved in the process. Thank you. I would also like to say goodbye. Thank you, Natalie. I would like to give you the floor, who's going to cover some other aspect, but sadly not be part of it. But exactly, thank you very much, and I can't wait to meet you in other contexts. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Julia, for joining us today. Will not force you to stay here anymore. Thanks for coming. I'd like to turn to Natalia Prigornicka, our next speaker. She's co-founder of the Alliance of Ukrainian Organizations. I'd also like to remind about the time schedule. Let's try to stick to it. We are kind of a bit out of the time frames, but let's try to stick to 10 minutes and have 10 minutes for Q&A session. Thanks a lot for that. Natalia, the floor is yours now. Hello.
за запрошення. Не можу не дозволити собі сказати пару слів українською. Моя доповідь буде німецькою, і запитання можемо робити українською також. Оскільки попередньо так домовилися, отже, ich switche zu Deutsch, weil
I'm going to switch now to English because that was the agreement. I'm going to share some viewpoint with you. I'm going to focus on my work. Today is we're trying to address a very important topic, and I'm very happy so many people join us. Actually, I did not expect so many people from Ukraine to be part of this round who are going to listen to our contribution. I do hope that they have questions at the end of the presentation. The focus of my work is going to be on the participation, not mostly the wording of integration and participation, but rather try how other participation may create possibility for people who migrated from Ukraine. And I'll go briefly, since I have 10 minutes for my presentation, I'm going to present the organization I'm part of. And then I'm going to try to share some information on how we have been trying to involve people in organization, work of organization, but generally in projects. And also we're also going to talk about the challenges and chances that link with the question of participation of refugees. Alliance Ukraine organization is an alliance of several organizations who were established by people who themselves are originally from Ukraine or who've worked there for several years. A lot of those organizations were created as after the war started, after the Crimea was annexed, and so there was a good ground that was created to come out to come together after the main war that began in Ukraine. The alliance, we have 10 organizations which are members, and who currently we moved from 10 to 15 who are linked directly to the structure of the alliance. We're talking about organizations, among others, who are providing humanitarian support, work support for refugees, support for youth, support for political work and political communication. And we're talking about also organizations. I'm not going to share their names. I'm going to share a link to the website where you can have another view on those organizations which are members of our alliance. And our goal here as an alliance is to put in place strong structures that we firstly have a structure where the voices of Ukrainians or integration background can be perceived in the society, that Ukraine as country can be understood, which in Ukraine is I would say a lack, a missing point until we had the situation with what took place some 2 years ago, and now the Ukraine has been as a country from which a lot of people fly from. So there are a lot of information people do not have, information that people do not have about Ukraine. So we need to provide sensitization work. So our goal is to establish a network, also build up strong relationship with partners from societies, from other organizations, but state-owned organizations, state-owned structures like the communal, district level, state level, who working administration. We are trying to bring strength together. For us, important to provide assistance to involve those who fly from Ukraine due to the war. But not only, for instance, at the beginning of the war, people were asked the question, how do I find a house? How do I submit my applications? So it means that if I'm an active person, I want to do something where I can have a structure, where I can get involved in. For instance, if I have an own organization, I want to establish one organization so I can provide counseling advices to people, give them advices on how we proceed ourselves to make sure that people are involved in the process that we are trying to put in place, bind them to our network. This April, we had 80 organizations in Germany that came together, represented and we had about 150 persons. Sadly, we couldn't host more than people, invite more people, but the interest is big. And there were, of course, people who been living here for more than 20 years, as well as people who just arrived like 6 months ago, like people like had a year and they wanted to just get involved. And for the Alliance, generally is all about by the work process to come up with the terminology of integration. Since it was used at the beginning, it's not only necessary about to for those who arrived to Germany, it wasn't those who have freedom to decide what to do. People did not freely decide to move to Germany. It was because of the Russian war, and it was a clear majority of people who are affected by it, and so they're not here now here, and we are talking about arriving to society. So how can people participate in society? How can they have an easier way to join the society, to include the society? But equally mean that a lot of people who are going to spend a lot of time doesn't equally mean that they're going to stay here. Of course, even when we check out the last evaluation, there are a lot of people who want to return to their country at the end of the war. If the Ukraine win the wars, they're willing to return to their country. Some people felt like, okay, we are going to establish ourselves here, and they try to build up something here. But what's important here is that those who decide to find a way here, they should be involved, come out, from sensitized on the participation opportunities that are available for them. And so that's what the introduction of talking about the question of how do you bundle people? How do you involve people? How do you integrate them in the process? How are the conditions that are part of migrant, made of by migrants who are also living here? How are they getting integrated, involved in the decisions processes, taking process? So we hear from Julia that it functions with people who are represented there, but also on the other side, we have mechanisms where community act if can be activated. Taking one concrete example, through the war to Ukraine, there were specific working groups were created. If people themselves, even before the war, were active in civil society environment, then people were able to get in touch with one another, say that, okay, we ourselves, we also want to get involved in the counseling programs. And last year, we have civil society council where we from Alliance we are represented, and there was a group of people who were made from civil societies who also represented the administration who were willing to address the external question related to the Ukrainian war. So today we had a meeting at the Federal State uh, for affairs where Alliance is represented, and we also try to talk about topic related to Ukraine. And this is something that can be considered active participation in those processes. So it means that our topic can also make them valuable, communicate them, share them, so that we can exercise influence on the decision that's being taken and things that affect us directly, indirectly. So if we can do, regard to those who have been living here before the war, before the war, it is for instance, we say we have network, people can have access to those networks, channels. On the other side, we also try to propose seminars to people who are interested, who have just arrived to Germany or shortly arrived to Germany. And this is offers that are being done by the organization Sinomova, was all about promoting political participation for people who fled from Ukraine. And there we have the political system Germany had been shown. We have excursion on where we have bring them to majors entities where people are being told about how things functions here, and where we also have the critical conversation on how the networking or the common points are existing, but also have several programs for journalists, and we also, for instance, last year we had residencies where people can apply. The IFA organization proposed of mentoring programs, and where people with flight experience with people based here could link to one another, and they develop concept together on how they can find a way here in the society. And be part of the society, participate. The challenge here is that those measures are usually not very sustainable. So at the end of it, we feel like we have the contact that were being established in the project cannot be maintained. So talking about last point now, my presentation, what is not necessary for a sustainable strategy for successful participation? I would say we definitely need a strategy on how we want to develop the fourth thing. We also need clear so funding to make sure that we can be successful in our aim. So what does equally mean that with the action plan for Ukraine, we're trying to do that, and we see the positive point that this aspect is being acknowledged that it's needed, but also need to be implemented. It also needs to really be faster. The administration is pretty busy with own processes, but we see how people are sitting here, people are here, there's some already been living here for more than 1.5 years, and that they're waiting for the strategies to be put in place. So also supporting organizations who are already been providing assistance to refugees who involved in processes like the case in the islands where we have people who are actively involved. They should be having the opportunity to get involved more easily. All the organization members of the islands, like 89% of people who are acting in the islands are doing it on a freelance basis. So of course, that's just the case in Ukraine. People who, when they want to do something, they have their full-time job somewhere, and then the other side, they have to do that work additionally. So that's very challenging for them. That can in our situation, which can equally lead to conflict situations. So in general, we have to come up with formats that can facilitate the arrival in the society and establishment of networking, promoting the work of networking, funding of networking, that we understand to be universal for all communities, so all the people who have like experience in the society. And of course, we are also trying to focus in Ukraine, but it is an approach, of course, that can equally be implemented to other communities. My last one will be on regard to the already have 11 minutes spent how to establish, re-establish, rebuild Ukraine. It's something that we want also see consider to be very important, and we see the need to involve people because people who are here can also contribute to the building of the Ukraine. Even the jobs that are doing here, as they're doing, can be a contribution. They have the perspective on returning to their home country can before they continue there. So if they're doing something here, they can keep on doing that in the Ukraine when they go back. So there is a platform that's named Platform Rebuilding of Ukraine. This is a platform that put in place by the Federal State of Germany, where stakeholders, organizations can register and who are originally from Ukraine, and there they can participate to the various formats that are being put in place and get involved in the conversations that are taking place. So there's that option of participating in the rebuild of Ukraine, and there's several organizations of various levels on several topics can be involved in the process of rebuilding Ukraine, and trying also to already activate those who are also based in Ukraine or Germany, to activate them, make them be part of the process. Thank you very much.
Дякую вам, Наталія. Мені здається, що це була дуже важлива думка про
Thanks a lot, Natalia. I guess the idea is that it's all about the finances. It's crucial here. Unfortunately, people who work voluntarily, they burn out. You may have one or two short questions now. Questions to Natalia. Dear guests, if you have any questions, you may ask them now. You may raise your hand or type them in the chat.
Там наш комунікаційний менеджер написав, як саме
Our communication manager
чи ви побачили. Але там є
has instructed you in a chat on how to raise a hand.
І там можна обрати. Але
Tap the reactions section.
зараз виглядає не так, як зазвичай ми звикли. Так.
But it doesn't look the way it usually looks in Zoom. I agree. Any questions to Natalia?
Це я на вас тисну просто цієї
I'm pushing you
теми.
with this silence.
Так. Взагалі дуже було цікаво послухати. І мені
Generally, it was
здалася
really exciting to listen to this
думка про те, що
input.
навіть якщо люди не
And
планують
also,
залишатися надовго, це
I
не
think
означає,
the
що їх
idea
не
that
будуть залучати. Ну,
if people are not going to stay for a long time abroad, it's crucial for them to be integrated and adapted. It's crucial for them to be involved in the processes going on around them.
Пару років це все одно має сенс їхнє залучення. От.
Even if they only stay abroad for a couple of years, their engagement is
людей також.
of utter importance and they should be involved as well.
Наталії за допомогу Україні та українцям взагалі. Добре,
In the
якщо
chat,
якщо в нас немає питань, то я би пропонувала
if we
тоді
don't have any
перейти до
questions
нашого
to
наступного
Natalia,
блоку.
we may move on to the next block.
Також, Наталія, якщо, можливо, ви ще залишаєтесь з нами, то наприкінці, коли в нас буде блок питань до спікерів з української сторони, можливо, ви також можете там взяти участь. хто
Natalia, if you are planning to stay here with us,
Я
you
зараз
may
і
also
також відповім
answer
українською,
your
бо
questions.
насправді мені дуже легше і
I can
приємніше
also
говорити
answer
українською.
questions in Ukrainian as well.
Супер, чудово.
It's
Я
more
просто
pleasant for
там
me to
так
answer
задумала, що я не
questions in
знаю, до
Ukrainian.
кого як
There are so many
звертатися.
languages here that I don't
Добре,
know
тоді
what
рухаємося
language to
до
use to
нашого
talk to someone.
наступного блоку.
Let's
І
move on
я
to the
хочу
next block.
запросити до слова Валерію
I'd like to
Вершинину.
give the floor to Valeria Vershinina,
Засновник благодійного
who is
фонду
Director on Legal
Municipalities
Affairs
Services. Валерія, будь ласка.
of Charity Foundation,
Колеги, дуже приємно долучитися
of
до
Charity
сьогоднішньої
Foundation
дискусії.
Stabilization Support Services.
Насправді, коли ми обговорювали
It feels great to
благодійний
engage in
спосіб,
today's discussion.
підготувала
In fact,
питання
when we were
якраз
discussing
парticipatory залучення
this discussion,
внутрішньо переміщених осіб і практику рад
and I was
дуже
offering to
хвилювалася,
talk
що
about
можливо
participation
тема
and
буде не
IDP's Council,
доступна
I was
учасникам.
really worried and I had doubts
І я
whether
дуже
the
рада
participants
була,
will be excited about this subject.
насправді до неї є інтерес.
And it felt great at the start of today's event to know that
переселенка з
people are
Донецька.
interested in
Конкретно моя
this.
колега Анастасія Перепелиця, яка тут, ми
And
перемістилися
this subject is personal to me as I'm
І це дивна
an
ситуація,
IDP
коли
myself from
контекст
Donetsk, as well as
війни в
my colleague
Україні
Anastasia
триває вже 10
Perepelitsa, who is
років,
also here.
а за
And it's
внутрішніми
really
відчуттями
weird
здається,
situation.
що
It's
все це
absurd
почалось зовсім
as it's been
нещодавно.
almost
І
10
мені
years
здається, що
of
зараз ми
war
можемо
against Russia.
прийняти якісь
And
рішення,
still it
щоб
feels like it
зняти
only
тиск,
started
адресах
yesterday.
людей, які зараз
And we
зазнали
still have to
повномасштабного
look for
вторгнення.
solutions. We still have to
Так, ми
practices
з цими знаннями
to help
працювали
and
і
support people who
об'єднувалися.
suffered from the full-scale invasion.
Але це не зовсім так, тому що контекст ситуації дуже змінився.
We may have used the solutions that emerged since 2014, since the start of the war, but still the context is different now. That's why we have to adapt and we have to transform the practices and we have to do a kind of reality check of the
Тому що, на жаль,
there is a reality check with the
і, на жаль, ресурси скінчаються значно
we may
швидше.
run out of resources, we may run out of people, and we may not help everyone who needs
Зараз виглядає
our
наша,
support.
так, матриця ризиків.
And our matrix of risks is absolutely different now as of today. I'd like to share some experience on establishing IDP's Council as an instrument of engagement, of engaging IDPs into community activities. I'll tell briefly of the history of the IDP's Council, the way it developed and where we are now.
Я вибачаюсь, в мене чомусь
Give me just a second.
може трошки підвис.
I'm not able to switch the slides. Oh, okay.
Отже, ідея залучення внутрішньо переміщених осіб до життя громад
The
насправді
idea of engaging IDPs in community life,
2014 року, коли внаслідок
it was born after 2014, when after Russian aggression, part of Ukrainian territory was occupied, and that's why the IDPs as such appeared for the first time. At that time, around 1,700,000 people became IDPs, it was essential to establish a state policy for those people. At first, people were generally perceived as people who need support. People would perceive IDPs as people who exclusively need help and they need to be taken care of. But it was happening because of lack of experience. People didn't know what warfare is, what forced relocation means, and it contributed to the fact that the first state policies that emerged at that time, they were quite populistic. And that's why the repercussions of those policies, they were wrong and they were unproductive. One of the negative consequences was that some IDPs believed that people will have such support from the society and from state till the very end of the war. And that's why some people are now dependent on that support now for 10 years almost. That's why now there is a narrative that people have to be decent, to have the right to social protection and the right for civil liberties. And to restore these rights, our organization, Stabilization Support Sectors, has developed and has offered to introduce an instrument called IDPs Councils. IDPs Council is an instrument that allows to engage IDPs in the community life. It is crucial to emphasize that IDPs used to not have the rights to vote at local votes and local elections. It is also crucial to establish a dialogue between IDPs, between veterans and other vulnerable social groups. From time to time, there were some kind of comparison between IDPs and veterans or other vulnerable social groups. And some local authorities would say, we will not help IDPs as we have a lot of veterans, or we will not help the children of IDPs because we will have a lot of problems with our children in our community. That's why it was important to emphasize on the fact that there should be balance and justice in this field, and the interests and requests of one social group cannot be reached at the sake of the interests and requests of other social groups.
Так же сталося, що Рада ВПО будував цей концепт на концепті того законодавства українського, який був щодо консультативно-дорадчих органів.
Of course, it was the case that the IDPs councils were deriving from the legislation that was available at that time. That's why they were created as volunteering organization. That's why it resulted in a lot of volunteers, a lot of voluntary work, and a lot of women engaged in those processes. That's why it was crucial to give enough skills, to give enough knowledge and opportunities for women, for IDPs women, to give them enough skills and enough knowledge for them to be engaged in community life. But it's also crucial for establishing gender-sensitive policies. We also try to engage youth and young people in IDP councils. We know these groups, the social groups have very peculiar requests. They have needs for education, needs for development, and these subjects are quite tough in Ukraine. At the start of 2019, there were just 5 IDP councils created, And they were all pilot projects. In 2020, it was 13. You can trace the tendency, and you can see that the development was not that rapid. And we were trying to make IDP councils visible and effective in all of the regions of Ukraine. Still, before the full-scale invasion, the concept was not that popular. There was a widely circulated idea that the military conflict will be settled up somehow, that people will somehow assimilate themselves in the communities they were forced to relocate. And yet, you can see now the numbers and number of the IDP councils that were established since the start of the full-scale invasion. And if I'm right, then about 9 million Ukrainians were forced to leave and settle abroad. That's why we are doing everything possible for the state policy to be more inclusive and more transparent. And there is now a legislation act on IDP councils. And as of today, Ukraine has 24 regional military administrations and 490 local state administrations. IDP councils can have 18 plus participants. They are formed with IDPs themselves and also local officials. We are now in a very early stage. We are expecting that till the end of this year, we'll have around 500 local IDP councils. How can one become involved in the IDP council's activities? Well, the first way, probably the easiest one, if there is an active IDP council that operates in your local community, and if there is an opportunity to join them, then you have to submit an application to the local authority with a request to be included in the membership as an individual. It's quite possible that IDP council is still being established. That's why you may be included. The second way, you might establishing an IDP council. You can set up an initiative group and advocate for establishing the IDP council. And the third way, it's possible to participate in council activities not as a member, but as a guest. They're generally held being open. They're easily accessible. You may send appeals and give some proposals to the IDP council. You may also organize some expert discussions or some joint events with the IDP councils. In fact, there is a very broad field to be engaged, to be heard. There are also a lot of opportunities to make some additional values to contribute to what an IDP council does in your local community. I've already mentioned about this resolution. You can see on the screen. It has number 812. And almost immediately after it was adopted, there was a discussion. A discussion emerged, and the resolution is criticized. It can be improved a lot. And the ministry said that they are ready for it to be improved, and they are open for offers. They're looking for these improvements from the community. That's why these processes are currently going on. There are a lot of discussions taking place. And if you have any ideas, if you have any critique, you may inform the ministry. Apart from that, our organization is currently facilitating a discussion on a nationwide coordination hub, which would include the representatives of the IDP councils from all over Ukraine. And we would like to establish an exchange between the IDP councils from various regions. And we want them to be united and coordinated for all of the processes to be transparent. We can see the huge request from the IDP councils that representatives want to learn more about the decisions, about the various practices applied by various IDP councils. There is also a huge request to exchange the experience in decision-making, experience in conducting programs, with the opportunities to fundraising. Once more, I should emphasize that IDP Council is not a legal entity. It cannot be subject to fundraising, but local authorities in cooperation can do that. It's essential to know the authority, to know the possibilities. And it's essential to use these instruments. Strategic planning is very important here as well. And also engage in various experts and various representatives to the events and discussions. I guess I'm out of my schedule. I'll try to keep it short. So our organization in this year, we have given priority to IDP council skills, to conducting strategic meetings, as we believe that after being established, any organization needs support and needs consultations. That's why we have a lot of requests for strategic meetings. Unfortunately, our plan for this year is full till the end of the year, and still, if you represent IDP councils that are in the process, right in the process of establishment, and if you have a request for consultation, if you have a request for strategic meetings, you may turn to us and we will include you in our plan for the next year. We also have an opportunity to give financial aid to IDP councils. If you have that kind of request, I can give some recommendations or give some contacts who may provide that support. Thanks a lot, Valeria. Are you finished yet? Dear colleagues, I'm sorry I'm out of my schedule. Maybe you have questions. We didn't want to interrupt you because you had a very complex vision of what you're doing. Probably you have addressed the questions we had at the start of today's event, because there are a lot of people who were interested in the way it works. If that's okay for you, Valeria, we will make the Q&A session, a joint Q&A session after the next speaker. Once more, I thank you, Valeria. Now I'd like to give the floor to Anastasia Perepelitsa, who is a member of an IDP Council of the Zaporizhia Regional Military Administration. Hello. I don't want to be the last speaker, but it gives you a certain framework, and it doesn't allow you to talk a lot. You should keep it short. Our IDP Council was created before the resolution. The people who initiated this establishment of the IDP Council were the IDPs, the women, who were for quite a long time staying in Zaporizhia. It would seem that in 2018, it was a long time since the start of war, since 2014, and probably it would seem that for local authorities, that all of the problems were settled out, that all of the challenges are gone, and all of the people, all of the IDPs have some job, they have somewhere to live, they have something to eat, they have somewhere to work, and that's it. Still, for us, for our, like, all of these challenges we saw they are not settled. There were a lot of problems connected to long-term decisions, especially accommodation, especially voting rights. That's why we have decided to address the local authorities, address the Zaporizhia City Council, and we have used the experience of our colleagues from Kharkiv, from Donetsk. That's why we have a meeting with the Zaporizhia, head of the Zaporizhia city. That's why we have received his support. And we have. That's why it's kind of seems like that since the resolution was issued, it became easier for IDP Council to operate. And still, I believe that we have some advantages before the legislation act appeared. I believe that the civil society and the local authorities were united with the desire to change something, to implement long-term decisions, even though the legislation was absent. Whereas I believe now there will be a lot of manipulations now, as there is this resolution now, and people will be looking for just formally create those IDP councils, and they will only exist on paper. Whereas I advocate how important it is that the IDP councils are, it's crucial that they operate in fact and that they support people. What have we started with? First, we have done the accounted analysis of local communities, of whether all the services and opportunities were available to IDPs. We have found out that 3 programs needed to be changed. It was a social protection program and also the program of allocating the funds of the deputies. There were some limitations that IDPs couldn't use the allocation of deputy funds because they were not registered locally in the Zaporizhia region. We have advocated for changes in those programs and supported by IDP Council, these changes became reality. Our next step was the main challenge for the IDPs, and this was, of course, accommodation. There were several state programs at that time, but still we knew that we needed step by step to increase the funding and engage the funds of the local communities. We came up with the proposals for local subventions and allocate some housing from the local authorities. This initiative succeeded and the local community gave 30% of the funds needed, and there were several flats bought for that money. Of course, it didn't cover all the needs. It didn't cover the requests of all the IDPs, but still, we have designed the mechanism of and the way it should work. So from that point on, it's only needed to look for funds and make an apply, and then it all succeeds. It was hard when we started in 2020. The budgets were limited. All of the budgets were allocated to medicine, to fighting COVID-19, and still we have visited all of the places where the compact housing spots where IDPs would live. And we inspected the accommodation conditions in there. And we succeeded in allocating some funds for some renovation works in those housing complexes. There was obviously a lot of other initiatives. We supported a campaign for voting rights protection, and we believe it was a kind of impulse for the local communities to pay more attention to IDPs and their engagement in election processes. And our engagement in that was crucial. After the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, as activists, we were engaged in humanitarian aid. There were a lot of coordination hubs. With our partner organizations, we were fundraising. And the fact that we had an IDP council was a decisive factor that we were managing to react quite fast on the requests for the humanitarian aid. Of course, we knew that last year the so-called second wave of the IDPs emerged, and they needed our urgent support. We have engaged representatives of this so-called second wave to our IDP Council. These are people from the newly occupied regions. And we have now a strategic plan. We have applied it to the Zaporizhzhia City Council, and we are looking forward for it to be approved. I told really briefly about what we do, and now I would like to give 5 life hacks. The first aspect is having intention, and it's unity. It's intention to jointly do something. So local communities, local authorities should cooperate with the IDPs councils. Without such cooperation, it's impossible to look for any results at all. The second life hack is the planning is important, and written proposals and documents are essential. Without those, without documents, without written papers, it doesn't work, because you need to have a plan, you need to have it written on paper, and then you will have results from all of the meetings. And also it's about proposals for local authorities. Proposals should be based on facts, based on analytics of what IDPs need. So it should be representative of the IDPs requests. The third life hacks is gender-based approach. We have to involve men and women. We have to involve people from various vulnerable social groups. We have some people with disabilities, people with various needs in our RDP Council, and they should all have an opportunity to express themselves and a right to vote. Life hack number 4 is education. People from our IDP Council our colleagues, they all have opportunity to go for various trainings. They are able to sign memos with IDP councils in other regions of Ukraine. Number 5, the last point is you need to remember that integration works from both sides. It doesn't work that way that it's only IDPs who want to integrate, or it's only local authorities that have some kind of policy for the people to be integrated. It's an interaction, essentially. Local authorities have to love and take care of the IDPs, whereas IDPs need to be willing to adapt and integrate in community life. I'm right on time. Thanks a lot, Anastasia. The life hacks you provided are great, and I hope they will be helpful for other people who will engage in these activities. I'd like to commence the Q&A session now for us to discuss what has just been told. Dear guests, if anyone has questions, I know it may be challenging, but you may raise your hands physically. You may also type your questions in chat. Anyway, we are waiting for your questions. If there are no questions right at the moment, I'd like to ask all of the 3 speakers present now in this Zoom session. The question is, what kind of motivation should people have? If people are IDPs and they're willing to come back to their communities, what if some people who are IDPs abroad or in some guest communities, what if they are looking forward to coming back to their home communities? And that's why they're not willing to integrate and they're not willing to be involved in the guest community life. Valeria, please. Well, the first point is that it's probably not worth trying to engage all the people, like every single person. Not all the people are activists. Of course, every person goes through various stages while living through stress. In our organization, we tend to think that the first half of the year is adaptation period. People are only interested in surviving and providing their basic needs. To engage in community life, to commence some further activities, people need to have their basic needs covered, and then they are ready to do something else. Still, I believe that Ukrainians have a kind of very strange understanding of what basic needs are and what security is. The key motivation, regardless of whether you're looking forward to come back or whether you're not, the key motivation is to make the community life here and now better, to improve the community life. It's not the story of IDP Council competing with other vulnerable social groups present in the community life. It's always about cooperation. We had this story that local authorities did not include the IDPs in their request for vaccination. They have missed the IDPs. And then we noticed that it was just some kind of old legislation act they were driving from. And in the end, all of the vaccination was received, including vaccination kits needed for IDPs.
І пояснювала нам, чому субтитри не заміняють сурдопереклад. Така дрібниця, знаєте, мені як людині
Another problem was that educational programs for kids sometimes do not have translation into gesture language, and subtitles are not enough. And when we advocated this issue, nationwide, the situation became better all over Ukraine, not just inside particular local community.
І вимушеним мігрантам для того, щоб вони розпочинали свою діяльність в своїх
So this
нових
motivation for the community life to be improved here and now is the key point for us. Yeah, thanks a lot. The feeling that you are contributing to making other people's lives better is crucial. Natalia, please. I'd like to agree with Valeria. I agree that not every person is able and that every person needs to be engaged and be involved in social life. I believe that in Germany, the situation is different. What I mean is that people involved in participative processes, they are interested in preserving their own identity. When we conduct some kind of events, it's about unity of Ukrainians. It's about being heard. It's about speaking Ukrainian language. It's about the unity. Still, when there is an artist, a creative person from Ukraine coming to Germany, they have an opportunity to convey some messages, some narratives. They have the possibility to be connected to German society. I'm not sure I can say that there is an urgent need to involve all of the people. Sometimes you might think that it may be easy. And still, if all of the people who came to Germany, if they made at least one post in social media, if they would do that every day, it would change a lot. And there are a lot of discussions about that within the activist community. But what I believe is that people face various challenges. People are tired, people are exhausted, and they have a lot of problems. They need to be registered, they need to find a school, they need to find accommodation. While we are trying, while we impose our needs on them, that Ukrainian voice should be loud. Thanks a lot, Natalia. I guess it's an important note that if basic needs of a person are not met, it's doubtful she'll be able to be involved and engage in community life. Not all of the people should be activists first. Anna, did you have a question? Or not? I've heard everything I wanted to ask. I'm sorry, I have to leave now. I'm really grateful. I have to say goodbye. Thanks for joining us today and for answering the questions in this part of the discussion. Irina, I can see your hand, please. I'd like to thank all of the speakers. It's extremely beneficial. It's a very useful experience. But I would like to know if there is any kind of platform or some kind of catalog where all the courses, all the education skills would be collected in one place. We all have this request for expert support, for expert thoughts, expert opinions. And I would like to have, maybe they exist now, but this would be some kind of catalog for all of the opportunities for learning possibilities, how to learn with communities, and how to learn the taxes, the subventions. If the community is quite large, you need to do more. But if this is a small community, where even the wage of a mayor is small, it's quite different situation. And so my question is where to learn it? Is there any kind of platform designed for this request?
Напевно, що думала, що це Валерія відповість. Насправді у нас
I
є
was expecting that Valeria asks this question. We have some kind of web source. In fact, it's still a half a measure. We have several media resources. I guess we will share this media resources with moderators. They will share those among the participants. Still, it is not enough. The most education, the most consultation is done offline. Now we know that one organization cannot organize a systematic education for 600 IDP councils all over Ukraine. That's why we are planning to launch a training cycle and also a video cycle for the IDP council members. But it still should take at least 3 months. That's why for now we will share the links and all the materials we have for now. And we'll keep you updated as we do further. Okay, thank you. You might have the last question now, probably, if we have enough time. If anyone is willing. Who muted me? Am I muted? I don't know. We can hear you well. Okay. Okay. If there are no further questions, I'd like to tell you what's about to happen. We had our first event held on 5th September. We will collect all of the materials around these 2 events, all of the presentations from the speakers. We will send all of this information to the registered participants to your emails. That's why you might be looking forward for our emails. Of course, not exactly today or tomorrow. We need some time to organize all of the information, but we'll do it as soon as possible. I believe the discussion today was useful and was exciting for those who visited it today. And I hope that you heard some answers for your questions, and you were able to see some people who also do something similar to what you do. And maybe you may network and improve your connection, interpersonal connections. I believe it's a proper moment to say goodbye now. I was extremely glad to see you all today. Please follow our events. Keep tuned. Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye. There are a lot of words of gratitude in the chat. We thank you for being active. It's a pity we didn't have enough time for Q&A sessions, but we'll be looking forward for the materials. You can still ask your questions. I believe we will receive our community, Dnipro community, have just established the DP Council. Zaporizhia region.
Поділись з колегами інформацією, яка
Будь
є.
ласка, так, дуже цікаво.
Настя, would you please share your experience?
Ми готові з вами поспілкуватися, надати свої
I can give you my contact. We are ready to.
Я зараз знаходжусь територіально в Дніпрі.
I'm currently in Dnipro. I'm based in Dnipro.
Жовтня місяця. З задоволенням.
I will be in Zaporizhia the next month. That's why I'm looking forward to meet.
Якщо що, я можу залишити в чаті свої.
I will type my phone number in the chat.
Дякую.
Це публічний телефон.
Thanks a lot. It's my public phone number. It's all right.
Тільки прохання після 8 вечора і до 8
Наші зараз телефони ніхто не
Do not please contact me in proper time.
Інструкції вже навіть просто коли контактувати. От, так що...
Ви знаєте, колеги, я завжди шучу так, що в нашій організації є інструкція на 11 аркушах про те, як необхідно клеїти наліпки, коли ми передаємо гуманітарну допомогу. І знаєте, кожен рядочок в цю інструкцію додавався не просто так. Колись ця інструкція починалася зі слів «просто наклейте наліпку». Подумайте, що має відбутися за рік, щоб зрештою інструкція була на 11 аркушах.
Так.
Це як правило дорожнього руху.
Ну так, я ж кажу, сьогодні у нас було перше засідання, ніхто толком якось нічого не знає. Ну, от я скажу, ви скажіть вже з досвідом, так? У нас в Раді ВПО дуже багато було заяв, хто захотів бути там, так? Ну, ми вибрали, є активісти міста, які от присутні там на кожній видачі, тому подібне, і ми обрали директорів комунальних закладів, директор школи, коледжу, ліцею, тож ті люди, які спілкуються з багатьма людьми, які знають, де вони територіально. Наразі наше місце окуповане, дуже багато людей виїхало. І ми спілкуємося за допомогою директорів шкіл, так? Це ж цілі родини, і ми їх долучаємо вже, хтось десь щось почув, щоб нам передавали і збирали наших людей. Тобто, я вважаю, це правильно, так?
Ну, є різні, насправді, підходи. Основний підхід, що в Раді ВПО мають бути ВПО.
Вони всі ВПО,
а
це
не
всі
тільки
ВПО.
представники влади. Але я бачила вже зараз такі ради, де одні самі ВПО, а влада якось самоусунулась. Ну, насправді це не спрацює. Має бути баланс, і те, що прописано в постанові, хоча б там в якомусь там пропорційному вигляді, має бути збережена, тому що сама ідея – це донесення потреб і проблем ВПО до органів місцевого самоврядування і спільний пошук рішень. Тому те, як ви підходите там з урахуванням постанови чи ні, це, в принципі, рекомендована постанова для територіальних громад, але тут більш про те, щоб люди були спроможні і мали натхнення працювати над цими рішеннями і якимись програмними моментами, що зробити, щоб покращити ці умови проживання, як гуртувати людей, як підтримувати ваших людей на тих. Я розумію, у нас є специфіка по радах, які з окупованих територій, покращити життя, як сприяти тому, щоб контактувати з тими, хто є там за кордоном або в інших регіонах України, як підтримувати цих людей, як підтримувати їхнє бажання або там заохочувати після деокупації повертатися. Це все можуть бути питання на сьогоднішній день до Ради ВПО. Я вас запрошую будь-який час. Ви знайдіть нас в Фейсбуці, Анастасія Перепелиця. Можемо сконтактувати. Ось тільки якраз з Василівським районом сьогодні проводили консультації, через районний ОПСЗН можете нас знайти, тому будь ласка.
Дуже дякую вам.
Дякуємо вам. Я думаю, що просто можна тепер знайти наших спікерок і поставити їм запитання, бо в нас перекладачі все ще працюють, і я починаю переживати за їхнє.
Дуже дякую вам.
Дякую. Це тоді гарно.
Так, дуже дякую і до нових зустрічей.
Так, запрошуйте нас, дуже цікаво. Дякую.
Обов'язково.
До побачення.
Гарного вечора, до побачення.
Всім дякую, до побачення.